Time to pull up a chair and talk some Dynasty football. I am your host, J.J. Wenner, and this is the Ride Or Dynasty podcast. Last week, we tackled the top 12 wide receiver prospects, but this week, we're going so deep it puts your, I can't say that word, to sleep. Thank you, Ice Cube. I love you, brother. Joining me is my co-host, the brains behind this operation. You can find him on Twitter at JoeLow63. Joseph Harlow. How are you doing, my friend?
I am doing swell, JJ. How are you doing this fine day?
Fan-freaking-tastic. And let me say, Joe, I don't know where to begin in introducing our guest. Now, this gentleman writes for FF Faceoff, but more importantly, is one of the best people I know. Now, he walked into a restaurant in Canton, Ohio, after seeing a Twitter post last year at the Expo, and just walked in and was like, "Hi, I'm Jameson." And the rest is history, right? You can find him on X at Jameson Rules with the Z. My brother, Jameson Hutchinson. How you doing, my friend?
Doing pretty good. I don't think I get a better intro than that. So I appreciate you making me feel better than I should, but I'm really excited to hop on with you guys, both you, JJ, and my new friend Joe. I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. It's getting pumped up for the April draft. I've been diving deep into the weeds on some of these wide receivers, and I'm excited to get into it tonight.
Some of these wide receivers deserve to be in some weeds. If
Just a little bit.
Whew, man, it starts getting ugly at the end, but we'll talk about that soon. Gentlemen, a lot of action this past week. I almost just wanted to do a free agency pod, but I know it's hard to say. But if there was one move that got you the most titillated this week, Joe, what was it?
For me, being that we are the IDP plus, not IDP guys anymore, but I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball, and someone who I've been super high on for a long time, that is Azeez Al-Shaair to the Houston Texans. Now, it hurts being that I am a Colts fan, but I love that signing. The fit is perfect. He's a very good player. And it's one of those that I don't think he turns into a top 5 player, but it's a great fit. It's just top 15-ish, 10 to 15 range. Plug and play him. Have fun with him. I love it.
Yeah, I'm happy to see him getting that opportunity, right? Come out of the shadow of some of those guys who were above him out in San Francisco. Jameson, what got your juices flowing this week?
It's a little goofy. I usually don't go this way, but I'm going to say the center Lloyd Cushenberry going to the Titans. And I think it just kind of goes to a domino effect. This past season, they got the new offensive line coach, Bill Callahan, one of the best coming over from the Browns. They already got Peter Skronsky from last year's draft, and I think at number 7 overall, I think they're going to get a left tackle. We know last year the Titans ended up having a really bad offensive line, and this is before they did Tony Pollard, before they did Calvin Ridley, obviously. I'm just excited for this because I think it gives Will Levis a chance, kind of like what some of the moves that the Panthers have done, bringing in 2 guards. You know, they just got Deontay Johnson. I'm not sure if Will Levis is good or not. I'm kind of excited, more excited than most, but it just gives them a shot. And I think, these moves are just kind of a trickle down effect. And I'm really excited for the Titans. And honestly, the AFC South, I think it's going to be competitive this year.
Those are 2 great answers.
And I gotta say, I gotta butt in real quick, JJ. Yeah. One of the most important things for a young quarterback, getting a veteran center. We saw it with Justin Herbert and getting Corey Linsley. And sucks that's another Division 1, but yeah, Cushenberry, I love that one. I'm the Levis truther, and don't want to say that too loud, but I like him a lot. He was a really good prospect, I thought, comparatively to thing, and I just think that's really good for him. So love that you shouted that out.
Yeah, and one of the things, I live in Pennsylvania, so I'm surrounded by Eagles fans, and a lot of the younger fans who I teach at school are really underplaying the loss of Kelsey. That's a huge step backwards. And it's not always easy to overcome that. I know the Jets, when we lost Mangold, it was like, oh, he was the reason a lot of this worked. Right. So great points, both of you. Thank you. Before we get into rookies, I just wanted to say, remember, check out the website, idpguys.org. For a limited time, we are offering the first month for $1 if you use the code mock draft. Come to the website, get all the articles. Joe just wrote a new mock draft, which is, I mean, honestly terrible only because of what he said about the Jets. But
sorry, buddy.
I'm not. You did warn me last week about it, but
I did.
We have not spoken since. That might be
No.
on purpose. Listen, the Jets make me much more mad. But it's a great mock draft. Lots of great content over at the website. And like I said, you get IDP Plus for $1 for the first month. See how you like it. You'll come back for more. They always do.
Oh, yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Remember, we are going to be hitting these wide receivers in order of kind of Joe's rankings, but also the consensus, right? These are the next, after the first top 12, these are the group who comes next. And where's a better way to start than with Jalen McMillan? Joe, why don't you tell me about him?
Washington, what a year they had. Like, my goodness. 3 receivers who are going to end up in my top 50, 70-ish range on my overall big board. Not just fantasy, so that includes all 82 great offensive linemen. So they had a great year. But McMillan his injury early in the year really is kind of what helped Jalen Polk ascend, because McMillan was the wide receiver 2 last year before going in. So, yeah, so his numbers are a little lower than his raw numbers at least. But looking here on the screen for those watching on YouTube, and if you're in the podcast feed, you can see 2.3 yards per route run over the last 2 seasons. Great number. And that's with the variance in average depth of target, 13.1 in 22, down to 9.6 this year, just due to some different usage. He's a yards after catch threat. His size, and if you see his contested catch numbers, he's going to be a slot only player, most likely, or a mainly slot sort of player. He's someone I have comped to Jacoby Myers, so a little smaller, but I think he is a similar player. Slot only, limited long speed, but he has great hands. Like we talked about with the other Washington receivers last week, good blockers. For a slot guy, he's a pretty good blocker. So that's going to keep him on the field more. And like I said, slot only, like 95% of his snaps last 2 seasons came there. But in a PPR league, I think this is someone who you can get in the third. In some mock drafts I've seen so far for dynasty drafts, he's going in the late 4th round. So if you can get him there, this is someone who I think could be a wide receiver 2 lower end, maybe higher end wide receiver 3 for a long time.
Jameson, where are you at on Jalen?
I like him. I watched some stuff on him today, actually. I think he kind of extends the field a little bit more than I initially thought, because when you say slot receiver, I feel like it really gets boggled down to like short, stuff. But I mean, he really extended the field a lot, especially when you have Michael Penix, probably the best deep thrower in the draft. And probably if he plays in the NFL and actually starts, I think he will be one of the best deep throwers in the NFL. So I actually liked him a lot too. And I'm glad you brought up the stuff about Polk, because that kind of bring some things around once you start looking at the numbers. I know everybody loves numbers and data and all that stuff, and some of the guys I'm going to bring up here in a little bit, there's a backstory to why, and I feel like when we just look at the numbers, some of that doesn't always get brought into the equation.
Now, Joe, is there any concern that he was benefiting from having 2 top 12, right, NFL receivers on his college team? Like, is there any concern there or no?
Yeah, I think there is a little bit. However, being that in 2022, he was the legit number 2 over Jalen Polk, I do think that helps. The bigger concern is, with that and having Michael Penix, who, even though I'm a little lower on him than consensus, he's still a great college quarterback. Mm-hmm. And the offense was very college-y, so there are some concerns, but watching the film, I think he has legitimate wide receiver 2 on a team skills.
Very good. Well, Jameson, you are up next with Xavier Legette.
Legette is probably my favorite prospect outside of, the normal top guys. I think if any one of these receivers that we talk about today, he's got the highest ceiling by a long shot. 6'1", 221, a 4.39 40-yard dash. I saw him at the combine. I was up in Indy, and I mean, he is a specimen to see in person. He looks like I saw a lot of AJ Brown comps. DK Metcalf would be another one. Some stuff about him. He was a 3-sport athlete, and he actually spent most of his high school career playing quarterback. So when you look at as far as him as a prospect, he's kind of a late bloomer. He's got some stuff. He is raw. But this past year with Spencer Rattler in South Carolina, he was the second highest receiving in yardage, and also had 750 return yards in his career. So he had a motorcycle accident and some of the injuries that played before him. So kind of looking at the numbers there as well. But I mean, he's a massive dude. Like I said, he's got to work on his route running, just kind of polish some stuff up. But another thing with him, his on the ball being pressed by NFL corners, that's a little bit of a worry. But once he gets into space, I mean, my comp to him would be kind of like Mike Williams as far as the contested catch stuff, but he can also the run after catch kind of like a DK Metcalf where he's, fast, but you don't really expect it to be. I saw some Debo Samuel comps there, but I really like him, and I think if he's in the right system, he could really excel and kind of grow into honestly a wide receiver one. I know he's probably sitting wide round 2 right now, maybe round 3, kind of depending on how some stuff goes. But I really like the ceiling here. He's just raw. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Well, if you're looking for a raw prospect, somebody who can run 4.39 with a 40-inch vertical might be a good start. Good place to start. Joe, where are you at on Legette?
So Legette's someone that I've struggled a lot with throughout the process, being that he is an older prospect. He is or will be 23 as a rookie, and which is offset a lot by him not playing wide receiver until he got into college, and just having 1 year on the graphic here. We only have 1 year because I think he had more targets than he did this year than he did snaps in his previous 4 years. It was something crazy like that, but there are reasons for that. Being new to the position, random injuries. He is a fun athlete, just a crazy one. My comp for him is what everyone thought Quentin Johnson was last year, which he wasn't at all, but that's another story for another time. But he's one of those who, more than almost any other player in this class, regardless of position, landing spot matters. If he ends up in Pittsburgh or in Indianapolis, somewhere that can develop receivers with tools or players with tools, it's going to be, let's go. But if he goes somewhere else that doesn't have that pedigree or ability, he's going to fall off the face of the planet probably. But like Jameson said, despite the issues I do have with him, with his route running, his just general rawness and lack of polish, I do think if any of these guys do turn into a legit wide receiver one, it's clearly Legette.
Yeah, I have to agree. I always get worried, and you'll hear me say it a lot about late breakout ages. But with him, it's like if he dominated this year because it finally clicked and not because he was just so much older, I mean, he's easily going to be a top 10 rookie. I mean, he's a game changer.
Yep.
But we have to see what happens, right, at the next level. Never quite know. And landing spot is going to be key. I hope he's there for the Jets when we draft in the 3rd round, but that might be a terrible landing spot if our quarterback ends up being a VP candidate somewhere.
I think you'd have to get permission for him to actually be on the team. He'd have to take Alan Lazard's spot, and I'm just not sure if he can let go of him and Randall Cobb. So, but we'll see. We'll see.
All right, I'm going to move on and cry silently. All right, next up is Ricky Pearsall from the Florida Gators. Joe.
So here we have another slot guy. This is a pretty typical your white slot guy, except he's got a little more juice than that. He ran a 4.41 at the combine, which was speed that does show up on film. Maybe this was a little faster than expected, but still not by a whole lot. He has some of the best hands in the country. He made the best catch of the season against Charleston this year. I don't even know how to properly describe it. It was just insane. Don't know how the ball ended up in his hand, but he has variant. If you look at the chart here, he has variance and average depth of target. He's been used as a deep threat, as an underneath guy, and he has pretty good numbers in film with against contested catches with someone in his face. So I think he could be a really solid PPR play early on and with the potential to grow into a little more. I don't think he's ever going to be an outside receiver, just size-wise. He is a smaller receiver. So, yeah, and he's tough as nails, runs great routes. Really like him. He's someone who I think could sneak into the top 50 of the NFL draft.
Interesting. Jameson, where are you on Ricky?
I think he's okay for what he is. I know with a lot of these prospects, we try to make them more than what they are. He had a really good Senior Bowl. Like I said, at the combine, he was okay too. He's just probably one of the better route runners in this class overall. But I mean, you get what you expect. I mean, he's got some production, like Joe said. I think there's some PPR upside to him, and I hate to discriminate, but I mean, he's just a white slot receiver. I mean, that's what you get. There's some other white guys in this class that are actually a little bit different. One of them we'll talk about here in a few minutes, but Ricky Pearsall, just kind of just he is what he is. So just a slot white receiver.
So you're saying he might go to the Patriots?
Possibly.
It's very possible.
But seriously, what would be the best type of offense for him?
Trying to think of where I could see him, as bad as it sounds, and I don't mean to. I feel like a lot of people everybody says Kansas City, but Kansas City last year didn't stretch the ball at all. Patrick Mahomes has gotten to the point where he just navigates the pocket so well. He's not airing it out like we saw with Tyreek Hill. He'd be a great underneath guy. If they want to wait on wide receiver, I think that'd be a good spot. I think for me, that would be the place for him.
Joe, anywhere else or?
I could see it. You could also see like any of the Shanahan schemes, just that third dirty work receiver. But I do think he is pretty scheme diverse. I don't think there's one specific spot he needs to be in to succeed.
I was going to say Carolina before they picked up Deontay Johnson, so that was
so
my
funny
initial
that you
thought.
say Carolina, because my comp for him is Adam Thielen.
Yep, that's basically. I'd hate to put him there just because they've already got kind of two of them. So
yeah,
that would be my initial thought. And I was trying to go through some
honestly,
of the stuff.
even Houston makes sense since they like to use Dell on the outside.
Yeah, that'd be a decent one too.
All right, gentlemen. Great info. Let's jump ahead then to Devontez Walker, North Carolina. Jameson.
Yep. So Devontez Walker, 6'1", 193, had a really fast 40 at the combine, 4.36, 40-yard dash, 41 receptions for 699 yards and 7 touchdowns. His 17 yards a catch average. He's basically a deep ball threat. He was Drake May's deep ball guy the whole entire season. He missed his first 4 games due to denied eligibility, so that kind of reflects some of the numbers there. But he's really, for me, just kind of a one-trick pony. He doesn't do a whole lot else besides he's got great straight line speed, but as far as anything underneath, he's not very shifty. He doesn't really move fluid. He's primarily just an outside deep threat. I think he's going to go really late in the draft, and it just seems, as far as fantasy wise, I don't really see it. I wanted to comp him to Will Fuller, but he doesn't have the excitement factor that Will Fuller did when Will Fuller was, catching that stuff, it just seemed electric. It doesn't come off that way, at least on film with Walker, but I don't want to come on here and dog anybody because there's always a place in the NFL for these guys, but he's basically just a one-trick deep ball, type of guy. I think he's going to be a late round pick for somebody who wants a wide receiver 4, maybe a wide receiver 3 type of thing.
Joe, Tez Walker?
I'm a little higher on him. The NCAA did definitely screw him over with not allowing him to play early in the season. My comp for him is more of a DJ Shark, Mike Wallace, somewhere in that area. But yeah, he is right now a one-trick pony, but he did show a lot, I thought, of ability or potential to be a little more than that. Now, will that get unlocked? Probably not. Just odds are stuff like that doesn't get unlocked. He is really good deep threat, straight line. He added a lot of contested catch ability into his bag this year, though. And I think a big part of it too is being at Kent State for the first 3 or 4 years of his career, just lower competition level, worse quarterback play than with Drake May this year. And he dropped a lot of passes, but a lot of inconsistency, but he's a really tough one. He's one where if he ends up blowing up and being a great DK Metcalf level, obviously he's not that size, I'd be surprised, but I guess I wouldn't be shocked. But if he ends up being just another DJ Shark, also like, oh, okay, that's makes sense. One big season, a best ball league, I would be way more interested than your standard dynasty league.
Yeah, like a
And I
deeper
think-
best ball.
And I think for me, just my guess issue with him, it's not like he's bad. He's just got a very limited route tree, and it shows in the film. I mean, he only had like a couple routes that he ran. He's not very diverse. Not saying that he can't do that at the NFL level, but with North Carolina, I mean, he ran seemed like 3 routes.
Yeah.
That was basically what came off on film. So that's why I have him where I do. When we talk about these rookies, I don't mean to go on a different tangent. There's different strokes for different folks, and I don't want to come on here and start bashing these guys because they're young
Absolutely.
kids. They can grow and do all that stuff. But just as far as I'm seeing it, I just think he's a very one-trick pony.
It's very Brian Thomas Jr. It's a lot of my issues there. It's like he ran 4 routes maybe, but he's less of a freak athletically than Thomas is. So,
Right.
Well, speaking of young guys learning things, I'm not huge into analytics. I don't even know if I'm huge into film. I'm somewhere in between. Yards per route run, right? That's YRR, Joe. Can you tell me the importance of that stat?
it's something that kind of just gives a baseline for it. Literally means how many routes they run versus the yards they actually get in the pass game. So higher number means that they get more yards generally per their it's a rate stat, I guess, more than anything. It just kind of shows their effectiveness on the field, if things are schemed up more for them, or because you can see someone who gets 10 routes a game with a really high number, and that's just like they're a very effective player when they're used. A lot of stuff is schemed up for them. Typically, higher numbers, the better. The numbers in college are more inflated. A 2.28 would be crazy in the NFL, but college, it's a fine number, I'd say. I'm not a.
What are we
analytics
looking
savant.
for in college, do you think?
That's hard to say because offenses also really matter there. I would say
Okay.
probably higher than 2.5
Okay.
is good. Do you have any insight on that, Jameson?
I think about where you're saying is about 2.5 would be because we got so many different offenses. There's some, you got like the Bruce Arians where all he did was just take deep shots, and then you've got some that really are bring it to the line of scrimmage and kind of have their wide receivers work. So I think I don't want to quote that, but I think you're probably around in the ballpark there.
Yeah, and I'm no analytics savant or anything, but it sounds about right.
Yeah,
I dabble.
I'm just an idiot, not the savant portion. All right, gentlemen. Joe, let's go down to
Yes.
Florida and talk about Javon Baker.
Yeah, another very interesting prospect who a lot in the dynasty community are falling over. I've seen some people have him as high as wide receiver 4, which I think is it's a lot. Like, okay, let's calm down, chill. He's a big outside receiver, contested catch guy, jump ball, and he does have a lot of yards after the catch ability. He's a very physical runner and just player. Part of that though is a huge amount of his catches are contested catches. And we talked about it with Romo Dunes last week where he was getting a lot of those, but also it's like you can separate more than you want to. You're just really good at these. So you kind of gear down and go for it. With Baker, there wasn't a lot of separation on film unless it was managed by the offense, by Gus Malzahn's. I don't even know what you want to call that offense that he runs in Central Florida. But I don't know. And then even though he is really good with the contested catches, a lot of drops. I think over the last 2 years, 10.3 and 12.5% of his catchable passes were dropped, which that's a big number. That's a huge number. Again, there's a lot of negative there, but again, really good at contested catches. And despite a 4.54, I thought he was a little faster on film. Thought he was going to sneak into the 4.4s. And he's a really good runner after the catch. Get the ball in his hands, and he can make some plays. So, Jameson, what do you think about him?
I agree with what you said there. He's good at generating space, but he's not very good at actual separation, say like off the line of scrimmage. And then the only
I think
other
that's a really
thing he
good way to
doesn't
say it.
Yeah, I mean, like once he gets in space, or he can create space for himself. But it's just as far as getting off the ball. And then the other thing for him, he doesn't have the top end speed, but everything else about him, I mean, he plays at all three levels really well. Um, I think he's a fun prospect. I think he's got one of the more upside as far as the guys that we're talking about today. But just the two things, he doesn't separate off the line of scrimmage very well, and then his top end speed, he's not going to burn you. So, but other than that, I think Javon Baker's a really fun prospect. I think he'd probably go fourth, fifth round would be my guess as about right now. I think somebody like the Raiders could use him. I think Carolina could probably use him somewhere kind of along those lines there. But I like Javon Baker.
Joe, do you have a comp?
Josh Palmer is my comp, though I think he has a little more in him. Some more upside. Josh Palmer, someone I've hated a lot on, but I think that's more Justin Herbert frustrate Herbert with what the Chargers gave Justin Herbert than anything. But yeah, I think more upside than Josh Palmer.
Sounds great. Well, gentlemen, let's go to Alabama and talk about Jermaine Burton. Jameson.
I liked him a lot. Kind of similar to Tahj Walker, just a slight bit. I think he's got a little more potential. But Jermaine Burton, 196 pounds, 6 foot, 4.4540. Last year, 39 receptions for 798 yards and 8 touchdowns. About 20.6 average per reception. Before Alabama, he played 2 years at Georgia. And then in high school, he actually played with Bryce Young before Bryce Young's final year at Alabama. So he's got some connection there. The last 2 years at Alabama, I know they were more run first offense, but he led Alabama in receiving. He's just another deep threat, but he's got monster speed that goes along with it. And I think he's a little more diverse. He's actually a pretty underrated route runner as far as I thought. He's going to need space to succeed, but once he gets into space, I think he does a lot with the ball, and I think he does a lot of things really well. The only thing about him is just Alabama did not push the ball a whole lot with Milroe. They ran the ball a lot. So I think that kind of skews some of the stuff, but I like him a lot as a prospect. And I think he gets kind of comped to Tahj Walker. I think he offers a little bit more than him as far as a prospect goes, but I think a lot of teams could use him. I really liked him on film. I think he's going to be a middle round guy. He's going to be considered a deep threat only, but I think he offers a lot more than just that in the right situation where they can expand on him.
Joe, where are you on Jermaine Burton?
I don't have any disagreements, really. I think he's a great route runner. The 4.45, I thought he could have gone a little faster, but yeah, he's a really good receiver. I'm a Georgia fan just from being a kid and seeing a Bulldog on TV all the time. I was like, cool. And I hated him when he was with Georgia. And then diving back into the film, it's like, oh, damn, this dude's actually really good. So I think he's grown a lot in the 2 years at Alabama. And yeah, I think he's someone who's been trending up more than almost any other wide receiver prospect for me. I think he also has really good hands, 4 drops in his career. So yeah, I think, and like Jameson said, he's going to be mostly a deep threat, but I do think he has a lot more in the bag with how well he does run routes.
Very good. Thanks for the info on Jermaine Burton. Now, Jameson, I don't know if you are aware, but IDP Plus is sponsoring the Lawrence Taylor division at Draft Night Out this year. Now, drafts are going to take place at the Fantasy Football Expo in August, which you'll be at, Jameson.
Yep.
Now, In Between Media puts on a great event with music, raffles, giveaways. So make sure you're checking them out on X at Draft Night Out FF and sign up for a draft and get to the expo. Any words about the expo, Jameson?
If you're not there, you need to be there. Just personal experience. I was in Draft Night Out last year. It's a great event. Hosted at one of the restaurants there. It's a lot of fun. You get to draft. I'm already signed up for it, but I'm not in the Lawrence Taylor division. I'm going to leave that to the professional IDP guys, and girls. We got a couple of those as well. But it's a lot of fun. It's a great event. Especially just for the expo. Last year is my first year. If you have any questions, you send them to me. But if I got to pay for your ticket, I will. But I think it's an event. I think it's probably the best weekend out of the entire year. At least I can say for myself. And I can't stress enough that if you have the opportunity to go, even if you think you don't know anybody, last year I didn't know anybody. And then, of course, I meet one of the best here with JJ at the expo. It's a lot of fun. I can't recommend it enough. And if you're going but don't have tickets to draft night out, go get them. They're going to sell fast.
So once again, make sure you go to them on X at Draft Night Out FF and sign up for a draft, especially the Lawrence Taylor Division, sponsored by IDP Plus. All right, gentlemen. What's better than one McCaffery in the NFL? Another one. Jameson.
I like Luke a lot. I do want to bring up before we even talk about it. I know he's white. I know he plays in the slot. He is not the normal white, shifty slot receiver. I just want to break that up before we even get into it. But the family, he's got Ed, his dad, played in the NFL for a little while. You guys might know Christian McCaffrey. Been pretty good as far as fantasy football goes. But even though Christian McCaffrey got the shiftiness, Luke has got the opposite, but he's tough. He's got straight line speed. Comes out of Rice. He was 6'2", 198 pounds, a 4.4640. Last year with Rice, 71 receptions for 992 yards and 13 touchdowns. But he also rushed for 15 attempts for 117 yards. Quick thing about Luke McCaffrey. He's kind of a late boomer for a wide receiver. He initially played quarterback and receiver at Nebraska and transferred to Rice as a quarterback for the first 3 games before transferring full-time to a wide receiver. But he's one of the toughest, I think, wide receivers in the class. He's not afraid to go over the middle of the field. I know the NFL is a little different than it used to be when you guys had guys like Ray Lewis sitting in the middle of the field waiting for you, but he's not afraid of contact. He plays through it. He doesn't have the shiftiness as far as slot receivers go, but he's got the top end speed. He's still raw at the wide receiver position, obviously, from playing quarterback, but I really like Luke McCaffrey. I think a lot of people are kind of gaining some steam on him, but he's worth I think, a day 3 pick as far as the NFL draft goes, and I think he offers a lot of potential and a lot of room to grow. And one other fact about him, he had a faster 40 time than his brother Christian McCaffrey, so that's pretty neat. Just a little bit.
I'm sure that's brought up at the breakfast table. Joe, where are you with Luke?
I like McCaffrey a lot, which pains me to say as I went to a rival high school as all the McCaffery kiddos, all 4 of them. But that's all right. But no, he's very good. A lot of he's a very inconsistent and frankly bad at times route runner, but he's been playing wide receiver full-time for a year and a half, maybe. Yeah, there was a lot of time at quarterback. I think he started at Michigan, then Nebraska, then Rice. He tried to play there and then moved him. And for someone who's been playing receiver for maybe 24 months, he's pretty good, especially at a not joke level, not a D3, D2, FCS, like not a Power 5 conference, but he put a lot of good film out there. I think he is probably going to go a little later, 4th, 5th round, just because of that inconsistency, but he could blossom into a legitimate NFL second weapon wide receiver too.
Now, it's funny that you mentioned, so you went to a rival high school?
I did.
So his dad, Easy Ed McCaffery, and his uncle Billy both went to Central Catholic, which was a rival high school in my area. His uncle was a great basketball player too, went to Duke, transferred out of Duke, but that's pretty legit.
Yeah.
So what would be a good landing spot for him, Jameson?
I think the Raiders, depending on their quarterback situation, which we don't know. I think Buffalo would be kind of intriguing because outside of Stephon Diggs, they just lost Gabe Davis. The only thing they'll have in the next couple of years, if that is Khalil Shakir, they might have to overhaul the entire wide receiver core. But those are 2 landing spots, I think, for me. I wish we knew who the quarterback was in Vegas because I think that changes a lot. It's Devontae Adams, and then that's really about it. Michael Mayer, who was okay last year, but they have Aiden O'Connell, and then we'll see what they do in the draft, or if they get Justin Fields, or how it plays out. But I think those would be the landing spots for me.
All right, gentlemen. Well, it is time to move on to our next player, Jamari Thrash. Now, I did volunteer to take this gentleman, and I think I may have soured on him post-combine. Up until the combine, I was doing a lot of PFF mock drafts. He was falling to me a lot as a Jets fan, but I have some concerns about his late breakout age, especially that he was at Georgia State. When I look at his combine numbers, I am always most interested in the explosion numbers, vertical and broad jump. His vertical was the second lowest among wide receivers at 34 inches. His broad was the fifth lowest at 10 foot even. He also posted the worst 3-cone drill. I don't like seeing worsts when it comes to a prospect. If you combine all that with a terrible contested catch rate and 8 drops in his final year of college, like Jameson said, I'm sure he's a great guy. I hope him all the success in the world. I hope I'm 100% wrong. But Jameson, I think I'm out on Thrash, except maybe as like a waiver flyer. Help me out here.
I think a lot of, especially the drop catches, he didn't have a great Senior Bowl. That's another part of it, because it just keeps kind of what the film says. You see, at the Senior Bowl as well. He's a quick separator, but I think some of the stuff's going to have to improve as far as that stuff, especially the drops. I mean, he's not natural at the wide receiver position. I think that's the problem as far as NFL level. And then if he gets to the NFL level, if he gets pressed, I think he's done for. That's the transition. We see it in college. They play, seems sometimes like 10 yards off the ball, and then everybody can make and move. But I mean, you play at the NFL level and you go against these guys who will get in your face right off the line of scrimmage. If you don't have the footwork, and that's great if you're fast, but if you can't get off the line of scrimmage, it doesn't matter anyways. So I think that's kind of where I'm with you on Thrash. I think he's got some quick stuff. He's okay, but I don't see it really translating to the NFL level.
Joe, anything to add?
The one thing is that, like you said, he was at Georgia State, so maybe some of the issues and struggles he did have this year were going up a level to a Power 5 school at Louisville, but then going from Power 5 to the NFL is also quite a jump. But one weird thing with him is that he is, for the issues he does have as a receiver, he actually runs pretty good routes, which you wouldn't think that'd be something, and then tracks the ball well, especially deep, which is surprising for what's the other issues he does have. So I do think there is some potential there. I get why people like him. He's definitely someone who, if he gets 5th round, 4th round draft capital in the NFL draft, then yeah, I'm fine taking a 4th round pick, waiver wire, and stashing him on taxi just to see what happens. But yeah, I didn't love the film either, especially coming up from a smaller school and struggling.
All right. Sorry, Thrash.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people, well, I know a lot of people also look him up to see if his dad was James Thrash of the Eagles, but it is not James Thrash's son.
No relation there.
But if you start typing it into Google, it auto-populates, which means I'm not alone. Or at least I think that's how Google works. I'm old. I don't know how anything works. All right. Next up, speaking of old, Brenden Rice. Wow, the son of the all-time great. Jameson, where are you with Rice?
I think he's okay. Playing at USC with Caleb Williams. Coming out 6'2", 208 pounds. He ran a 4.5 40, which is okay. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but as the wide receiver too, this behind Washington, he had 45 receptions for 791 yards and 12 touchdowns. He started at Colorado basically just as a kick returner, and then came over to USC to play with Caleb Williams. And, the last 2 years, this past year, he was behind Washington. The year before, he was behind Jordan Addison, the now Minnesota Vikings wide receiver. turning out pretty well. He's a bigger outside wide receiver. Definitely doesn't play like his dad, but he uses height to win vertically. He's basically a deep threat, and I think he's a late dart throw in the NFL draft. I think he will contribute more, honestly, to special teams. I think that's how he will end up on an NFL team and then might be able to be a wide receiver 4. But I think, Cincinnati's got a guy named Charlie Jones who, does a lot of special team stuff, but he's going to end up finding his way onto the NFL field as a wide receiver. I kind of see that similar. I don't want to compare him as players, but I feel like that's going to be his role coming into the NFL. But it's nothing flashy with him. I don't want to say he's bad or anything, but I really do see him more as a special teamer, maybe wide receiver 4. I think he's going to go real late in the NFL draft.
Joe, he may not have run a blazing 40, but he was faster than his dad. What do you think about Mr. Rice?
I think they have training for the 40-yard dash now.
That is true. That is true.
They do.
I struggled a lot with Brenden Rice. It's like he is the type of receiver I really like. Again, Rome Odunze is my number 2 receiver. Jalen Polk for NFL is my number 4 wide receiver, lower for fantasy. But I like the bigger guys who can play that power slot role, and he's a nasty run blocker, which I love that in a receiver, but I really struggled with the film, like a lot, which I don't want to trash him or anything, but I really thought Caleb Williams did a lot of the work for him, which I like his teammate, Tahj Washington, spoilers, a lot more. But very different player. But I don't know. I really struggled with him as a wide receiver. Didn't think the hands were very great. You can see here, contested catch rate was very poor this year. Yards after catch, I don't think there's a lot of ability there, which is weird since he is a decent punt returner or kick returner. But I don't know. I struggled a lot. A lot of people like him. And if he ends up being good, I won't be surprised. It's just, I don't know. The vibes were off when I was watching the film, I guess.
Another thing about him real quick is the USC offense last year had to put up 40 points a game just to compete because Lincoln Riley's defense was so bad. And for being the wide receiver too, I thought that the stats would show a little bit more than that because, they were throwing the piss out of the ball. And I thought, I'm not a Cliff Kingsbury guy. I know Caleb Williams is going to be the number 1 overall pick, but I thought they left a lot of meat on the bone as far as the offense goes. So, as far as stats go, I just thought for a wide receiver too, I know they're not supposed to be the best, but 40 points a game just to stay in them, I thought we would be seeing a little bit more from them.
They showed up in the touchdowns, but not in the contested catch area. So it was really surprising to see that. I think all of his contested catches that he won were in the end zone, which, yeah, maybe he survived as your power slot, your wide receiver 3-4 in a red zone target. But yeah, it was.
Well, if he was ranked higher, he wouldn't have a flaw, right?
Yeah.
The lower we go on this list, the more flaws that are being exposed. And it's whether or not they're going to be able to make that next step, right? If they're going to be able to work and fix the flaws, or if they're lucky enough to land in a system that knows how to exploit their strengths, right? And that's what we see in the NFL. We have certain offensive coordinators and offensive-minded head coaches who know how to use their players to the best of their ability. And then you have Nathaniel Hackett and the goddamn Jets. Sorry, before I start losing my mind, as I always do when I mention the Jets, let's move on to his USC teammate. Joe, you started to talk about Tahj Washington.
Yes. If we want to talk about a slot-only receiver, as there are many in this class, here's another one. Tahj Washington, 5'10", 174. But weird thing about him, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see these contested catch numbers. Over his career, 23 of 47, just under 50%, which is, does that mean, I don't think he's going up for fade routes or 9 routes on the outside, but it's something. And also saw a lot of separation in his game, so that was a weird, just interesting nugget there. This season, or the past 4 seasons, he has, forced 50 missed tackles and accounted for 132 first downs, So some big time numbers there. I think he's a very gadgety player. He's one who I'm probably going to like a lot more for the NFL than fantasy. I just don't know if he's ever going to have a real wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 role.
Right.
Pop Douglas, I think, is a good comparison with some Josh Downs upside for just this past draft class. Good hand, or he has some good routes, some hands issues that Downs also did kind of flash at times, but wasn't a huge concern with only one drop this year. But the last few years it was a concern. Yeah, I think he can be used really gadgety and be a very fun player.
I don't think they have the similar traits, but Arizona did some stuff with Greg Dortch this past year, just some stuff closer to the line of scrimmage, kind of gadgety. I mean, he's not going to be a burner by any means. I think most of his work is done in space, and I think a lot of that comes screens, gadget plays, that sort of stuff. So I agree there.
All right, so it's all going to be about landing spot?
Yeah.
Yo, where would you like to see him go? Or Jameson?
Joe, you can go first.
How kind of you.
Honestly, a Miami would be fun. Just one of those, a lot of motions, those Shanahan schemes where they're everywhere. But something like that. I think one of those, Houston again. Try not to name the same teams, but yeah, I think somewhere where they'll use motion has been fun. They
all kind of clump together.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in Washington with Cliff Kingsbury. Curtis Samuel just got signed today. So, and Terry McLaurin is secretly getting up there in age. I don't think people realize that. He's a later college prospect, and I think a lot of people think of him, as this young, just kind of entering his prime. He's kind of starting to creep into the, later parts of his career. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him in Washington as well there.
Yeah, with Curtis Samuel leaving, they definitely have an open role there for him.
Absolutely. Yeah, Terry McLaurin turns 29 like week 2.
Does he really?
Yep. Yeah. You don't think that, though. You think he's probably 25 or 26, but he actually played high school ball up north here around Indy. And, I mean, he did the 4 years, and, I mean, he's a late bloomer. But you wouldn't think that, though, because in the fantasy community, I feel like we have this weird thing with Terry McLaurin that if he just had the right quarterback and the right system, he would be the wide receiver 1 alpha. And I think that's a little misconstrued, I guess. I just think he is what he is, and he's really good. But like I said earlier, we make some of these guys more than what they are, and he's quietly getting up there in age, something people don't realize.
Oh, now I do. So let's go from Washington to Washington. Joe, Malik.
Malik Washington from the Virginia Cavaliers. Another player I struggled with. Also, our second straight slot guy who had a really good contested catch rate. Now, I'm not sure what this was. It's not something I super noticed on film, per se, that they were just like winning jump balls or anything, but must be like screens that got blown up and they still made the catch, mostly. He transferred to Virginia this year from, I forgot to write down where he was at first. That's my bad. But he had a pretty decent year in that offense this year. 3.15 yards per route run, very short ADOT, so was very much used as an underneath receiver. He's a very tough player, very tough as nails, breaks and tackles. Some drop issues, 6 on 300 targets, which isn't huge, but it's noticeable, especially with not every one of those targets being catchable. But I don't know. I saw him very similar to Wan'Dale Robinson, but just with the size, the small gadgety type. I don't think he has as much juice. I think he's, like a group of 5 version of Wan'Dale Robinson, basically.
What about you, Jameson? Any love for Malik?
I think he's okay. I pretty much agree with what Joe said there. He's really tough. He breaks a lot of tackles. I think that's been the main thing with him when I watched him, especially for his size. I mean, 5'8". In the NFL, we're starting to allow these wide receivers to have roles. We just saw Tank Dell, who is a really undersized guy. Xavier Worthy, out of Texas. We've had a lot of discussion about him. These guys are starting to make their way into the NFL and actually being able to have an opportunity. But I pretty much agree with what Joe said. I don't didn't love him or hate him. I think, he's small, he's kind of quick and all that stuff. But other than that, there wasn't too much for me that really popped out.
Well, he's definitely got some weight to him, which makes up, like, if you're going to be shorter, at least be a
Right.
little bit heavier. 191 is a solid wide receiver, considering we see some of these 6'2" guys coming in at that same weight. All right. Anything else to say about Malik Washington?
I think we're all good.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, you kind of left me with Jacob Cowing, or maybe I volunteered. I'm not sure really how this went, but another tiny wide receiver for me. But I wasn't really prepared for how tiny he is. I love his speed, first of all, especially at slot. Played 75% of his college snaps there. But 168, man. Oh, looking at the past 10 years in the NFL, only 2 players his size or smaller have recorded more than 500 receiving yards. And that's Taylor Gabriel and Deontay Hardy. Gabriel has done it 3 times. So if that is the best case for Cowing, how does he measure up? So I look at the RAS scores for both. Cowing had a better 40, but a slower 10, a slower 20-yard split. He has a slower shuttle, a slower 3-cone, a worse vertical jump, a worse broad jump. If his best comp based upon his size, like, is more athletic than him across the board, man, I can't see him panning out. But listen, I'm old. I'm set in my ways. It might be me. I'm not touching him probably even in deep leagues. But recently, guys were really, like, touting him on X. So, Joe, what am I missing?
I think he's a good football player. I just don't know how good, and especially for fantasy. My comp for him is a Calvin Austin. Like, he's quick, as super quick. On film, his start-stop is pretty good. So, and he does have that. He's been used as a deep threat. He's been used underneath. But I also struggle with him a lot. I don't really understand why he gets so much hype. But I think, yeah, he's just a fun late dart throw for an NFL team. So, yeah, he's very small. And Calvin Austin was also 5'8", 170. Just mostly a returner who might get a weird, like, RPO that he just breaks one tackle and goes 70 yards because no one else is there. But I don't know.
Or a game where there's some injuries and he's forced into action. He puts up a couple numbers. Jameson, I'm turning to you. Then you have to tell me.
I think it's tough for him just because he plays in the slot. And then, if somebody powers him, it's pretty much game over. I mean, he's going to have to use his quickness to get open. And I can see him more of as, not that you'd bring him in just for the red zone, but his quickness you could utilize in the red zone. Just try to, beat your man in that real quick area. But other than that, I mean, it gets real tough. I know he did some returning, but even at that, his speed, like, he wasn't, Devin Hester or anything crazy. I mean, he wasn't spectacular as far as the returner either. So he's a tough eval for me.
All right. Sorry, Jacob Cowing. We support you and we wish you the best. We hope that you have a career that's as good as Calvin Austin's is so far, where you can cash some checks and make it to the year 3, right? That's when you become vested.
Yes.
3 years, baby. That's what we're praying for you.
Hang
you
on.
got this. Hang on. Now, I don't know if we could come up with a more opposite wide receiver than Jacob Cowing, but hell, we are gonna try.
I will say,
Johnny
ordering them this way.
Wilson. Whoa.
Ordering them this way was intentional.
Joe, go ahead, brother.
Jameson, I think, actually is taking the lead on this one.
I'll handle this one because this is this gets a little goofy here. But Johnny Wilson, the complete opposite. He is a whopping 6'6", and I think he looks a little bigger than that. He's 237-pound wide receiver. Actually ran a pretty decent 40 for his size at 4.52. 41 receptions and 617 yards and only 2 touchdowns at Florida State. Some of this, his quarterback got hurt towards the end of the year, so I think that does, as far as touchdowns go, the Florida State offense, fell apart when the quarterback fell down. But for his size, I think in the NFL he would most benefit for transitioning to a tight end. Just at his size, I don't see him lining up and actually beating people as a wide receiver. He does most of his work off play action. I think that kind of the intermediate portion of the field. He's not a natural catcher of the football. I saw some of his stuff, and it looked like you and I trying to catch a football in the backyard. His wingspan is there, and he can grab some stuff out of the air. But his body control or lack thereof really kind of shows on tape. So doesn't have long speed, and he's not going to miss defenders either. He's one of the weirder prospects just because he's labeled at wide receiver. He does have the tools, I think, to become a good blocker in the NFL if they want to put him on the end and turn him into a tight end who can do some dump offs. The thing that reminded me of if you watch late Antonio Gates, he only had about 2 or 3 moves. Like he would be on the line of scrimmage and he would block, or he'd run up a little bit and then kind of turn around and just kind of be a chain mover in that sort of fashion. They did some other stuff with him, but as far as like being a deep threat, 10 yards, he was around that range just about the entire time. He's not going to, break things off in space or anything like that. But as far as the NFL goes, I think if he wants to compete, I think wide receiver transitioning into the tight end would be best for him. But he is just a really weird overall prospect just because you don't see guys the size. I know we used to have the 6'5" wide receivers, but they were, slim, fast. I think of Megatron kind of goes in that realm of people, and he's just totally different.
Joe?
Yeah, based off pure film, I don't have a draftable grade on Johnny Wilson for NFL. Just to be totally blunt, which don't, again, feel bad just being mean, but I really don't see it. His drop rate was 12.2% for his career. Like healthily above double digits. So into double digits, I should say. The tools, yeah, high weight speed, it's there. He has some interesting release packages, and makes a circus catch occasionally. But yeah, I think he plays super small as well. And I don't think not calling him soft or anything, I just think he doesn't know what he is. It's like something like DK Metcalf also plays like a smaller receiver, but he ran a 4.3 and can break so many tackles and is great laterally. But Johnny Wilson doesn't have that. He needs to just be either a tight end or outside posted up, and he doesn't do that. So I'm not a fan.
For his size, he's not very dominant. For 6'7", 230, you would think he would be domination station on the field, and it's not that at all.
Well, I haven't been more heartbroken about a Johnny since Soda Pop watched Johnny pass away. Stay golden, Pony Boys. Stay golden. Peace out, Ralph Macchio. Well, gentlemen, we're getting close to an hour. We have the best of the rest. We have 5 remaining players. This is what I'm looking for. Last week, I was a little mean to Joe, or was that 2 weeks ago? And I said, you only have 5 words on these guys. 5 words was too short. I felt bad. I was making him write haikus off the top of his dome. So I'm giving you guys 10 words. I'm generous today. I'm generous.
Thank you.
So let's start with Bub Means. Joe, 10 words.
Before getting into Bub Means' 10 words, I want to say for this group, I would take all of them over as a dart throw end of year drafts earlier than Johnny Wilson, Jacob Cowing, Malik Washington. I would take them, Jamari Thrash. I would take most of these guys over Brenden Rice. I think they're just more upside there, though they probably could go later in the actual NFL draft. But starting with Bub Means, this is one of my guys late. I think he's very Donovan Peoples-Jones, height, weight, speed, raw, big time potential.
Jameson.
He's a raw, big receiver who can widen and lengthen the field.
like that. You guys both knew the rules. Let's go to Cornelius Johnson. Jameson.
A gritty, contested catcher who can block and get dirty.
Joe.
Ditto. I like him a lot.
I like it a lot. All right, Marcus Roseme, Jack Saint. Joseph.
Great name, physical player, good hands, limited athlete. Marvin Jones is my comp.
Jameson.
A big possession receiver who lacks speed and quickness.
Ooh, Jaquan Jackson. Jameson.
An undersized but fun slot receiver who can return punts.
I love punt returners. Joey.
I think Jameson stole from me, so same again.
And last but not least, Anthony Gould. Joe.
Best returner in the class. Small, really physical.
Jameson.
An undersized, electric, deep threat who can also return punts.
Oh, that's what I love to hear. If you're 5'8", 174, you better be a good returner. Gentlemen, it is time for tags where we share any final thoughts that we have and let everyone know where they can find us. Jameson, you're up first.
Well, first off, I appreciate you guys having me on. I want to get that out of the way. It means a lot, but I'm over on the Twitter machine at Jameson Rules. Most of my stuff I do DFS during the regular season, but I'll be doing best ball drafts, gambling. Got the NCAA tournament next week. I've got Thursday and Friday off. I've got the Traeger going. Be gambling, doing all that stuff. But like I said, I'm over on the Twitter machine. You know where you can find me at Jameson Rules right there. And that's really about it.
All right, Joe.
You can find me on Twitter at Jolo63 or writing for IDP Plus. As JJ said earlier, I dropped a mock draft for the NFL mock draft, not a fantasy mock draft. And check it out. There's some fun, interesting trades in there. Besides that, yeah, you can find me podcasting also on the Mailbag Show every Tuesday live with my good friend Justin Fry, who just changed his Twitter handle to, need to find that real quick, to JFRYEDP. So you can find us Tuesdays at 2 Eastern. Yeah.
Fantastic. I would say the trades in your mock are interesting. I didn't find the Jets one that fun. Wait, who did you have them trade for?
Devontae Adams.
Yeah, that's not happening. All right.
Probably not, but it was fun.
It was fun. Hey, listen, it couldn't hurt. I'm at JJ Wenner on X. Thank you to Joe for all of his work on this episode. It's been great. This is our third one. Loved everything we've done. Thank you. Thank you to IDP Plus for all of their support. Thank you to Gary and Foxworth for helping produce the pod. They do the graphics. They do all the shorts. They do all the legwork in getting this posted. So thank you so much. And a special thank you to Jameson for being the dude. Grateful to call you a friend. I'm looking forward to our pre-Expo trip to Pittsburgh to watch a baseball game. It's going to be a blast. So thank you so much. And everybody out there who's listening, make sure to visit idpguys.org. Use the code MOCKDRAFT for the first month for $1. 1 month, $1 using the code MOCKDRAFT. So from all of us to all of you, be safe, be well, and remember, never say anything to make a meeting longer or cut a happy hour short. Boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.